I was a shadow on the wall, a glorified extra. Those aren't our words, they're Sam Elliott's, describing the first time he stood on a movie set beside Katharine Ross, the woman he would stay married to for 42 years. She was the leading lady on one of the most famous westerns ever made. He was a nobody in the bar scene, and by his own account, he was too far beneath her to say a single word. He didn't dare. You've been handed a simple version of this story. Hollywood's great fairy tale. The marriage that proves love can last. Two beautiful people who found each other and never let go. Here's the part almost nobody says next to it. By the time Katharine Ross finally noticed the quiet man in the corner, she had already been married 4 times, and not one of those marriages had lasted 5 years. He had never married anyone at all. By every rule that town plays by, this marriage should never have happened. And yet in 2026, they walked a red carpet together in matching black, standing closer than couples half their age. The extra and the leading lady, 42 years in. Stay with us, because the turning point wasn't a wedding. It was a horror movie almost nobody remembers. Because in 1969, Katharine Ross was not someone a background actor got to talk to. She had come up fast. A few years earlier, she'd been a near unknown, and then the parts arrived one after another, each bigger than the last. She played John Wayne's daughter in one of his pictures. She was Etta Place in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, standing between Paul Newman and Robert Redford. She was Elaine in The Graduate, the girl at the back of the church, the face of one of the most famous final shots in movie history. She was the doomed wife in The Stepford Wives. She won a BAFTA. She was an Academy Award nominee before she turned 30. In a room full of famous people, she was the one everyone looked at. And Sam Elliott, that same year, was an uncredited background player they'd hired to fill out a saloon. Picture that gap for a moment. They were close in age, but that was the only close thing about them. One of them was the reason the cameras were rolling. The other was a man sitting in the background of a scene that belonged to someone else, trying not to be noticed. He looked across that set at the leading lady and said nothing, because in 1969 there was nothing for a man like him to say to a woman like her. And there's a cruel little detail to that shoot, the one almost nobody mentions. On that same production, Katharine Ross was involved with the film's cinematographer, the brilliant Conrad Hall, a man at the very top of his craft. She would go on to marry him, so the nobody in the bar didn't just watch a movie star. He watched her walk off that set on the arm of one of the most celebrated men in Hollywood. He wasn't even in the running. 15 years later, she wouldn't marry the celebrated cameraman she left that set on the arm of. She'd marry the man in the corner she never even noticed. But that was a long way off. Sam Elliott would carry that mustache and that slow, gravel voice through years of small parts in television westerns, the kind of roles a man takes when Hollywood hasn't decided what to do with him yet. The Sacketts, the Shadow Riders, the Yellow Rose. He was learning his trade in the background of the background, one forgettable credit at a time. And Katharine Ross was not about to wait around for him to figure it out. Why would she? She had her own life to live. And she lived it the way a lot of women do who keep hoping the next time will be the one that stays. Because those years cost him something. The very things that would one day make Sam Elliott unmistakable. The mustache, the drawl, the unhurried weight of him were back then the things casting directors didn't know what to do with. The business wanted clean cut and quick. He was slow and Western in a decade that had moved on from Westerns. For the better part of 15 years, he was told, in 100 small ways, that the man he actually was would never be the man on the poster. He kept going anyway. He took the bit parts and the television and the roles that ask a man to stand at the edge of the frame and mean nothing. And somewhere in there, he watched the leading lady from the Butch Cassidy bar go on marrying other men. He had no reason on earth to believe his life was pointed anywhere near hers. He just refused to become someone else while he waited to find out. And this is where the story stops being a fairy tale. One of her husbands was that same Conrad Hall, the cinematographer from the Butch Cassidy set, and even that marriage ended. Another husband she met while filming The Stepford Wives, and by 1979, that one was over too. 4 husbands in all, 4 goodbyes, not one of them making it to a 5th anniversary. Think about what that does to a person. There was never any scandal in it, and that was almost the hardest part. Think about the quiet of it. A woman the whole country considered one of the most beautiful faces in film, sitting in yet another lawyer's office, signing yet another set of papers, wondering if the thing everyone assumed she had, a real marriage, a home that held, was simply not meant for her. Because that is the part the magazines never understood about Katharine Ross. From the outside, she had everything. The looks, the fame, the men, but you can be the most envied woman in America and still come home to a house that keeps emptying out. 4 times she had believed it, and 4 times she had packed it back up. By the time she was pushing 40, the smart money said she simply wasn't built to stay married. She was the woman men fell for and could not keep. That is the woman Sam Elliott had been too nervous to greet. And now, hold that image, because the two of them are about to collide. It is 1978, London. A horror film called The Legacy. A story about strangers lured to a cursed English estate and picked off one by one. It is not a good movie. It is not a movie anyone puts on a list. But it is the movie where Katharine Ross, still married to husband number 4, looks across the set and finally sees the tall Californian with the mustache. This time, he isn't in the background. This time, they play a couple. And what he did next tells you everything about the kind of man Sam Elliott is. He did not make a move. She was still married, so he waited. He waited through the end of a marriage that was not his to end, and only after her divorce in 1979 did the two of them give it a real try. Remember, this was a man who had never been married at all. He'd never had a first wife, never a starter marriage in his 20s, never so much as a close call. While Katharine Ross had spent 2 decades learning how marriages fall apart, Sam Elliott had spent those same 2 decades not marrying anyone. He wasn't gun-shy, he was waiting for the one that would be worth it. 4 men had been handed the thing Sam Elliott wanted more than a movie career. 4 men had let it slip through their hands. He was not going to be the 5th to lose her. He was going to be the last one to keep her. They married in May of 1984. It was her 5th wedding. It was his first. And then, almost before the ink was dry, the two of them became 3. That September, just 4 months after the wedding, and 4 months short of her 45th birthday, Katharine Ross gave birth to a daughter. They named her Cleo Rose. Think about the timing of that. A woman who had spent her whole adult life learning how to leave now had a newborn in a quiet house in Malibu, and for the first time, nowhere she wanted to go. They raised Cleo far from the cameras that had defined both their lives. They noticed early that she was drawn to music, and they let her chase it, the guitar, the flute, singing. For decades, they kept her almost entirely out of the press. 2 famous people guarding one ordinary childhood. And if you want to know how that turned out, look at the red carpet in 2026. When Katharine Ross walked into the Actor Awards on Sam Elliott's arm, the makeup on her face had been done by her daughter. The little girl they hid from the world grew up, and now she's the one making her mother look ready for it. But if you think the hard part was getting the two of them together, you don't understand what nearly pulled them apart. And it's the one thing that quietly ends more Hollywood marriages than any affair. When they married in 1984, there was no question who the star was. Katharine Ross had the Oscar nomination, the iconic roles, the face the whole country recognized. Sam Elliott was still, at that point, a working actor. A tough guy in Lifeguard, a cowboy on television, a man nobody had built a statue to yet. She married down in the only way Hollywood keeps score. And then the ground shifted under both of them. Over the next 15 years, the shadow on the wall became the legend. Tombstone, The Big Lebowski, that voice narrating half the commercials in America. Later, an Oscar nomination of his own for A Star is Born, then 1883, then Landman. The man they'd once hired to fill out a saloon turned into one of the most recognizable faces in the movies. And as Sam Elliott's star climbed, Katharine Ross's dimmed. The big roles thinned out. She had her own honest theory about why she turned down parts other actresses would have killed for, the girl in Bullet, a role in Airport, and in an industry that punishes the word no. She'd earned a reputation for not wanting to work. Now, one thing quietly poisons marriages like this one. When a person's fame rises at the exact moment their partner's fades, it breeds a particular kind of resentment that no amount of love seems to survive. The famous wife watches the unknown husband she married become the star she used to be. That is usually where the story ends. It's not where this one ended. And the reason is the quiet choice Katharine Ross made next. She didn't claw to stay in the spotlight. She stepped out of it on purpose. She poured herself into the family, and into something almost none of these videos ever mention. Katharine Ross became an author. She quietly wrote and published more than 10 children's books while the industry moved on without her. The woman who had walked away from 4 husbands did not, this time, walk away from anything. She simply decided the marriage was the bigger part. And Sam didn't leave her behind in the light he was now standing in. He kept building ways to pull her back into it. In 1991, he sat down and wrote a screenplay himself, adapting a Louis L'Amour Western called Conahare, and he produced it for the specific purpose of putting the two of them back on screen together. Years after that, the two of them stood on a stage and performed love letters, playing lovers who spend a lifetime just missing each other. This was a man who kept inventing reasons to share a set with his own wife. They even made it into a private joke. In 2017, in a film called The Hero, Sam Elliott and Katharine Ross, married more than 30 years by then, played a couple who were divorced. The one goodbye they never had to say to each other, acted out for a camera, and then left behind on set, and when the cameras were off, they didn't chase the party. They went home to a ranch, horses, open land, quiet. The deliberate ordinariness of two people who had both seen what the noise does to a marriage and wanted no part of it. For most of the last 40 years, the most famous cowboy in America has spent his time being mostly an actual one. They chose that quiet on purpose. And that is what makes the handful of times they do step out together worth paying attention to. Sam Elliott and Katharine Ross are not a red carpet couple. They do not sell the marriage. In a business built on performing intimacy for cameras, they have spent 4 decades doing almost the opposite, guarding the real thing by keeping it off screen. So when they do appear, dressed to match, his hand at her back, it does not read like publicity. It reads like two people who simply wanted to be in the same room, which after 42 years might be the rarest thing a Hollywood couple can still honestly project. You cannot fake the ease they have. It is the ease of people who stopped auditioning for each other a very long time ago. If, in his case, he ever got the chance to audition at all. The extra never did get to introduce himself in that bar. He just spent the next half-century earning the introduction. So what actually held them together? The real answer is smaller and stranger than the magazines ever made it. Sam Elliott has said it plainly. Asked how they lasted while nearly everyone around them did not, he didn't reach for anything grand. He said they love each other, and we work at it. That was it. Not fate. Just a man who kept showing up. And Katharine Ross, the woman who had walked away 4 times, put it even simpler, asked the secret to a marriage that had outlived every prediction. She laughed and said, "You ride the roller coaster and hang on tight." That is the whole thing. She had ridden it 4 times before and let go every time. The 5th time, she held on. And the man she held on to was the one who had once been too intimidated to say hello. And do not mistake work at it for something small. 42 years is not a feeling. It is a decision made 10,000 times. It is choosing the same person after the fame flipped, after the roles dried up, after every ordinary Tuesday that no love story ever puts on screen. Most couples in that business did not lose each other to some grand betrayal. They lost each other to the slow erosion nobody films, the drift, the boredom, the easier exit 2 doors down. Sam Elliott and Katharine Ross had every one of those exits available to them and more reason than most to use them. She had used them before, 4 times. What made the 5th marriage different was not that the roller coaster ran smoother. It was that, this time, neither of them let go of the bar. And what we take from a story like this is not what you would expect. The marriage that lasted didn't begin with lightning. It began with a man in the background of someone else's scene, and a woman who had every reason to believe the next husband would be temporary too. Love arrived late for these two, and then it stayed longer than anyone's that showed up early. In 2026, nearly 50 years after that bar scene, Sam Elliott and Katharine Ross walked a red carpet together at the Actor Awards, dressed in matching black, standing close the way couples do when they have long since stopped performing it. He is in his 80s now, so is she. The unknown she married had turned into the biggest name in the room, and she had chosen, on purpose, to stand a step out of the light and let him have it. The shadow on the wall married the leading lady. It just took him 15 years to cross the room. If the 5th time was worth the wait, tell us where you're watching from tonight. Subscribe next, the truth about Sam Elliott and Tom Selleck that everyone got wrong. It was never a fairy tale. It was a man who decided, quietly, to be the one who stayed.